Hello, hello. It's a very pleasant October evening. Clouds are scattered in the sky, but the sun is popping out. It's just setting. It's been very temperate, but very nice today. Today, the topic of discussion: Alexander Pushkin's The Queen of Spades. Perhaps is that this on the cover? This person? No, this is Catherine the Great, Catherine II, but I guess in many ways she does look a bit like a queen of spades, and a fitting cover portrait. So Alexander Pushkin is one of Russia's greatest writers. He was living in the time of the 19th century, the early 19th century. He was born, I think, late 18th century, and he died around, I think, 1836 or 37. He died quite young. He died in a duel. But he has been regarded, even during his lifetime, as Russia's greatest writer, and he is quite an impressive writer. He wrote poems. He wrote quite a lot of fiction, and I believe he also wrote some non-fiction, but I'm not completely certain about that. I have yet to read any non-fiction by him, but I believe that he did, I would assume. And The Queen of Spades is one of his best-known short stories. It was published in 1833, I believe, and it concerns gambling for the most part, but a few other themes. Now, Queen of Spades begins in a gambling saloon. These men are gambling. They're playing, I believe it's Faro, a card game. They're wagering on their hands and all of that. And there's a character, Tomsky Nurmanov, I believe is his name. He's not exactly the most important character. Narumov, Tomsky, and Herman are there, and a few other guys. And they're all gambling except for Herman. Herman is a German, or at least he has German ancestry. He's a Russified German. He's at least a first generation German, but Pushkin and the characters make it known that he's German. They mention that, and that's quite important. He's also an engineer, unlike the other young men who are all military officers of some kind. That's also perhaps quite relevant. Now, Tomsky wagers money, and he loses a lot of money, and he goes, if only my grandmother shared her secret with me as to how she made a lot of money gambling, betting. And the other characters are intrigued by this, and a few of them know about this story, that his grandmother, the Countess, I forgot her name, but we'll just refer to her as the Countess, she purportedly made a lot of money gambling very, very briefly, and she told the secret to a young man that she liked. And she learned this secret from a Frenchman, Saint Germain, who was a real Frenchman during the 18th century, and he was a bit of a bohemian, a bit of an interesting fellow, kind of a bit of a Casanova type person. And he told her 3 cards that would win. If you had those cards, you better bet on them. 3 special cards. And the Countess told this trick, these 3 cards to a young man, purportedly. And the myth has sort of spread around the Countess. However, the Countess doesn't gamble herself anymore at all. So the guys continue on to do their gambling and all of that. And Hermann really takes this story quite seriously. And he starts to appear around the Countess's residence. And it's not quite sure if he takes a liking for the Countess's ward. She's kind of her ward slash maid. Her name's Lisaveta. And she's... the way her existence is described is it's not the most pleasant for her. She's a bit of a maid, a bit of a servant to the Countess, and the Countess is very overbearing. It's a little bit comical in some ways. The Countess wants to read novels, but no novels that have where the main character kills themselves. And every time Lisaveta gives her a novel, she hates it and kind of blames Lisaveta on the novel being bad. So she's a bit trapped. She's a bit of that archetype of the princess that has to find her Prince Charming to save her. And it seems perhaps that Hermann is entering into this role, this young Russified German engineer. And he sort of loiters around the Countess's residence. And eventually he starts writing letters to Lisaveta. And he gets her information, contact information and all of that. Starts writing her letters. And Lisaveta is kind of taken aback by this. She's a bit distant at first. She tries to resist him. But his letters become more intense. And eventually they agree to meet at one point when the Countess is coming back from a ball. Very late at night they agree to meet. When her and the Countess are coming back from a ball. And before they agree to meet, Hermann, just before then, that night, Hermann shows up at the Countess's residence. He finds a way in to the residence, and he enters the Countess's room. And just as she comes in, he tries to get this secret from her. This secret of the 3 cards. And the Countess tells him, "Oh, that was just a joke. That's not real. That was just a joke." She tries to kind of push him away. But then he takes out a pistol and he threatens her. He says, "Really, you have to give it to me." He pleads for her to give him the secret. And she faints and dies from that. She's already a very old woman, an incredibly old woman. She's described as having far outlived her life and her generations, her generation at least. And she faints and dies. And Hermann, that night Hermann, right after that happens, Hermann speaks with Lisaveta, and she's a bit distraught that, oh my goodness, this guy, this supposed Prince Charming, was actually coming for the secret. Oh, so she's quite distraught about this. And Hermann escapes, and no one thinks anything suspicious of it. They think that she just died because she was old. She just fainted and died. And they go to the funeral. Hermann goes there, and he's quite haunted by the corpse of the queen, I shouldn't say the queen, the Countess. And later, he has a dream while he's in a bit of a delirium. He has drunk quite a lot. He has a dream, and during his dream, he sees the Countess come into his residence, and she spills the beans to him there. She tells him the numbers: 3, 7, ace. Those are the 3 numbers. and you can only bet on one at a time, she said. I believe it's one every day, and once you bet on them, you cannot gamble anymore. So you can only bet basically 3 times in 3 days, one after the other. But there's also a condition on her secret, and that's that he has to marry Lisaveta. So he's quite excited to try gambling for the first time. So Herman has not gambled a penny. He's a penny pincher. Described quite, I think that stereotype of Germans still remains today. Penny pinchers. Definitely not willing to spend money, being quite frugal. However, Herman has a bit of a romantic soul in himself. A romantic soul that is perhaps a bit, in some ways, is described as the soul of Mephistopheles, which is perhaps not the greatest soul to have in a way, because Mephistopheles was a demon in Werther's Faust. He's in many ways the antagonist, I believe, and he's described as having the profile of Napoleon, which I wonder, that feels like a bit of a slight, but maybe I'm misreading that. The profile of Napoleon, like the physical features of Napoleon, that's quite a negative thing to have. So anyways, he decides to finally go to gambling, and he goes to a saloon and goes there for the first time. He's with I think Tomsky, I think, or he's with one of the guys, and he decides to wager a whole bunch of money, and everyone is kind of shocked because this guy has never bet before, and he wagers a whole bunch of money on a certain hand, and what do you know it? He has the 3, and the 3 is the winning card. So he wins a whole bunch of money, and then he wagers the next day. Same thing happens. He wagers on the 7, wins a whole bunch of money. By the 3rd day, a whole bunch of people are at the saloon, and they know what's going to happen. They know he's going to be there, and they're just waiting to see a crazy play again. And this time he wagers a whole bunch of money. The ace is the winning card. And Herman says, I've won it with the ace. But then the host says, no, you don't have the ace. You have the queen of spades. And Herman looks at his card, which he thought was the ace, and it turns out it's actually the queen of spades. And it bears a striking resemblance to the countess. And the queen of spades winks at Herman. So this is such a beautiful story. I just summarized it all there. And at the end, the conclusion, Herman goes crazy. Lisaveta gets married to a nice young man. And I think Tomsky does well for himself, but Herman gets admitted to an insane asylum. So I just summarized the whole story there, the whole short story. And sorry for that. Usually I give a bit of a gist before summary, and I don't really do the full summary, but I just felt the need to do that. It is such a wonderful story. If you still want to read it even after that summary, highly recommend it, because there are many things that are stuck within the story, themes within the story that are quite interesting to grasp. One of which is the nature of chance, obviously, gambling, chance. That's perhaps not as relevant. That always comes in with gambling. But the most relevant is a sort of fixation on wanting money, material wealth, and it's really this greed that leads Herman to his downfall, because there's no indication during the last chapter that he thought or actually went about plans of marrying Lisaveta. And it seems like there was a psychic attack by the Countess in the form of the Queen of Spades that knew that Herman was not going to marry Lisaveta, that Herman was not going to hold up his side of the bargain. So then she transformed into the Queen of Spades. Now, is it that Herman actually saw his card as the ace, or did he just believe that his card was going to be the ace? So was he just so fixated on seeing an ace on the board and knowing for sure that he was going to win, not even bothering to look at his hand? Or did the card magically change hands? Did the card magically change? That's a question to ask. Now, there's the opening of the last chapter gives a bit of an insight to this, and it might have been the former, in which it says, so this is by the time that he has the secret. Two fixed ideas cannot coexist in the moral sphere, just as two bodies cannot occupy the same space in the physical world. The 3, the 7, and the ace soon blotted out the image of the dead countess from Herman's imagination. 3, 7, ace never quitted his head, and constantly moved on his lips. If he caught sight of a young girl, he would say, "Isn't she slender, like the 3 of hearts?" If he was asked the time, he would reply, 5 minutes to the 7. Any pot-bellied gentleman reminded him of an ace. 3, 7, and ace haunted him in dreams, assuming every sort of guise. The 3 blossomed before him in the shape of a sumptuous grandiflora. The 7 took the form of a Gothic gateway. The ace became a giant spider. All his thoughts merged into one to make use of the secret which had cost him so dear. He began thinking of retirement and travel. In the public casinos of Paris he intended to wrest the treasure from enchanted fate. Chance relieved him of the trouble. So that passage, in which there's never too much of an inundation of philosophical passages with Pushkin. However, he does have a few of these. Just a few of these. It's not as bad as Tolstoy or Dostoevsky, but he will engage with that at times. And that passage there does indicate that Herman was fixated on those numbers, and his fixation caused him to lose grasp of reality, the actual cards that were being played on the table. Now, there's also the fact in which Herman may have, dreamt it all up. He may have thought that those were actually the cards, and this delirious dream that he had was not a real visitation by the Countess. Now, perhaps in a sense as well, we could say that him losing, perhaps in a way, saved him, because if he had won, he would have continued to gamble and gamble even more. However, that's I think that interpretation is not the best in a sense, because he does go crazy. There are many other forms of media that inspirations and adaptations of this short story by Pushkin. There were plays that were made that expanded on it. One by Tchaikovsky. Yeah, Tchaikovsky. Tchaikovsky, Swan Lake, The Nutcracker. He made a play on it. And there's also quite a lot of films that were made, Soviet-era films on this short story. It remains incredibly highly lauded, and it is a great short story. It's a great short story on greed, on maintaining your word. There's also a sort of inversion of the Prince Charming princess trope, in which Lisaveta is seeking for a Prince Charming, someone to rescue her, and she believes it is Herman, but Herman isn't really it. He is someone who is on his own fixation, his own path for wealth. But a great short story, The Queen of Spades by Alexander Pushkin. Highly recommend it. Highly recommend reading some of his works. especially if you want to be familiar with Russian literature. This is a must-read. Anyways, thanks for sticking by. Have a nice rest of your day.